Hello and welcome to Holy Shift. I'm Stephanie Gray and I am your host for whatever this is, this reoccurring conversation that we're having together about the shift in consciousness that's happening on the planet right now. And if you're new here, welcome. And if you're coming back, thank you. And let's dive into it. I think today I think it's funny. I'll give you just a glimpse of what I've been experiencing today as I'm trying to record. I had a whole idea of what I wanted to record, and my my guides, my team, um, wanted me to do something different. So here we are. We're going to talk about um, my team and what I have been, what has been sort of given to me through my art incrementally since 2020, but really in earnest. They started really honing some things um, through my art at about, I'd say, May of 2021. And we're going to talk about this. If you are interested in some of the images that came along with the information, then I would encourage you to look in on this page, on the YouTube page, under, I think it's under the shift. And there should be just sort of like a walk through some of my images that came through along with the messaging. Um, but it really, as I was practicing, it came through more and more. It was more than just a couple of words after a while. But I do want to back up and talk about the fact that we all have this internal guidance system, right? It's not just me or anyone who does sort of what you might consider channeling or automatic writing or whatever the situation is. We all have this point of power within us, and we can learn to tap that in a way that is familiar for us, and it doesn't have to be scary, and it's, in my opinion, for our highest good. And you can even set the parameter of this is for my greatest and highest good before you even start your practice. And in fact, I suggest that. But yeah, so it's things started happening quite naturally in a way because I have been an artist for so long, and they did come through in my art first, and it felt absolutely normal and fine for that to happen because there was some leeway there. It wasn't just like um, interstellars or spirit guides coming face to face with me, right? And because that would have freaked me out, and so they they reached me where they could find me, and it's been sort of a gentle unfolding since then. So I have sort of been preparing for this time, this shift, for a while with their help, and I'm guessing many of you have too. And if you haven't connected yet, I believe we all have these teams of support, right? And I, I'm I would say it's probably just, not just, but who or whatever you resonate with the most. Um, my team has ancestors, interstellar beings, so ETs, um, a higher version of myself, my higher self. All of these entities and beings come together to form almost like a council for me, specifically for me. And I also have a spirit guide who never has taken form. His name is Shiloh. Him, right? But their name is Shiloh. And yeah, I mean, it's, if you're not used to it, it can sound a little weird, but I believe that as we continue to shift, these things are going to become more and more mainstream, and people are going to talk about, how do I connect with my team, and how do I get the information for myself? And that's really what they wanted me to talk about today, and some of the messaging that they have given me. So we'll sort of dive right in. The first the first bits of information, excuse me while I grab my book here. I like to create an altered books. And so this is actually an altered um, ledger from the early 1900s that I began altering. And like right from the get-go, they started to give me information. And one of the first things they sort of imparted to me was being okay with who you are as you are in the moment. So, that is a foundation, that self-love and self-talk that we have, and this whole idea that we have to fix something. Yes, we have wounding, and yes, there are things that we need to look at. There is shadow work and all of that, but also a way that can propel that to happen even faster is to be okay with yourself as you are in the moment too. And then those things happen more naturally and bubble up. At least that's been my experience. As I accept myself as I am, then things that I need to, maybe integrate into myself, happen naturally and come through. And that's what I do art. One of the reasons I do art. Um, so one of the biggest things that they did was this really profound, strong image of kind of like a light being who basically the information they gave me, the one word was arrival. And the next was make room for the true you. So at first, when I saw the word arrival, I thought, interstellar beings or ETs, and maybe that's possible. In fact, I believe that eventually that will happen, and that will be part of this transformation that's occurring. But what they were trying to impart to me was making room for the true you, that perhaps higher version of ourselves, because we all have more of a soul self, right? And so making room for that soul self to come in and be part of the now and part of the self that you are in this moment, um, an arrival. And I'm not an expert in any of this. I'm just sharing my own experience, but from my own experience and from what I am feeling into, it feels like we are in a space right now on this planet where we can actually make room for the truest version of ourselves to come through. We don't have to wait for our death, the body death or anything like that. We are given the opportunity to do that now and to have this amazing convergence. I don't know if that's even the right word. This amazing connection, and walking with that truer, higher version of ourselves. Um, yeah, so that was a big one. And the next thing that they talked about was letting go of fears and worries will help you move into what's next. And I don't know about any of you guys, but that has been what's been happening the last few years. Like really seeing some places where I have stored fear, um, not only in the stories that I tell myself, but also in what's going on in my body. Like a lot of times we can do a lot of work with our head, right? About fears and releasing and all of that. But there's a somatic piece to it that I have been working with. And I believe they're helping me to work and release that and transmute it back into a space of love. Um, so that was another page that they imparted to me. It's an image of just letting it go, let go, letting go of fears and worries will help you move into what's next. That was a big one. Um, they gave me they gave me the phrase light is winning. And it's so funny because when I first got this, I'm not even sure what winning over what, like, what does that even mean? Now I see that there is more and more light coming onto the planet. That's how I'm experiencing this. And as light becomes more visible, as light shows up in more and more quantities and higher quantities in frequency, then more of the things that might cause us fear or the things that we need to look at, the darker things, the shadow work is being presented now. So light is winning, and I would have to completely agree with that now that I understand it. Um, the next one is trust yourself and the guidance you are given. And for me, and again, this is how it all has connected for me. I was sort of moved to share this, but everyone else is gonna, I mean, everyone's gonna have their own flavor. But and that's what this is about. Trust yourself and the guidance you are given. So I would say in the last couple years, for sure, things for me, I have not really known what to trust, who to trust, what is really true and what isn't, on the outside of things. But when I go within and I learn what what it feels like to trust myself and what truth feels like for me internally, that's how mm, I can manage my own guidance system within. And then it's a really it's a place of empowerment when we are in that space. So trusting yourself is a practice. For me, it's an ongoing practice, and it looks different for everyone. So it would be, it is whatever it is for you. And it's important as we move through these transformational times. Yeah. Um, here's one that really like irked me when I heard it, and that is freedom is an inside job. Do not look outside yourself for true freedom. So I'm not sure. I don't know why that hit me so weird, but this has been a few years ago because now I read it and I'm like, well, yeah, it's kind of the same thing, right? So you're trusting yourself. Freedom is an inside job. How do we free ourselves from the inside out? And that is by, getting to know our own frequency, getting to know our own truth, getting very curious about what's really going on in our hearts within, um, our divinity that we house within, all of that. So do not look outside yourself for true freedom. I thought that was very interesting. Um, the next one was resisting and being afraid will only make things worse. And I have found this. Again, all of this stuff came out and I did some art around it and it felt really good. And I mean, this was during COVID as well. So there were there were pockets definitely of resistance and there were pockets of fear. And so to hear resisting and being afraid will only make things worse did make sense because when I found myself in these places, I did feel a constriction within. And there's this feeling of sort of constricting and making myself feel small. And then there's that expansive energy that you feel more when we talk about freedom and truth inside of ourselves. So resistance, what is resisting maybe what's coming up that wants to be looked at, resistance of what's going on the planet. Whatever that means, but that was a powerful one for me. The next one has been a saving grace for me in the last couple of years, and that is feeling your way through instead of thinking will be how you transition. And when they say transition here, I believe they're talking about this new version of how we're going to show up for ourselves on the planet, how we're going to show up for ourselves, for the planet, for each other. It's just going to look different. And I believe the reason it's going to look different is because we are moving from the head space and more into the heart space. And that is more of a feeling. It is feeling our way through something. So I'll use an example for me. I was having a political conversation with someone the other day, and noticing how I felt in my body when I was having this conversation. And although the conversation was very civil, it was fine, but it didn't feel good. Like, it didn't feel right. It didn't feel good. And later throughout that conversation, we started talking about creativity and expansion and everything that we're talking about here now. And I realized how different I felt in my body when I was talking about something like that, or, heart to heart conversations versus something that really kept me more in that divisive feeling. Even though it was a fine conversation, there was nothing wrong with it. It just it felt heavier. So noticing, feeling your way through instead of thinking will be how you transform into the next level, right? Of a heart-centered being and what that looks like. And then I think this may be the last one in this particular book. I have a lot, and I'll continue to share that as we move forward. But vulnerability, I'll never say that right, is power in the new world. So becoming vulnerable and sharing from the heart, sharing when things feel difficult, or sharing when you feel like, hey, I feel like I wasn't heard, or hey, I'm scared right now, or my stomach hurts. When you say that, it's just a different way of expressing and moving through the world. We've been taught to buck up, right? To just sort of internalize everything that we're feeling if it's not what we think other people want to hear. Um, Weakness, never let them see you sweat, all that stuff. Like showing a weakness is not something that has been um, promoted on on the planet, at least in the West, right? We've really been designed, or we've really been given the idea that it's you need to keep that stuff inside and hidden. So vulnerability is power in the new world. And I have found that to be true. It is not always comfortable. Excuse me. It is not always comfortable to be vulnerable, but in the long run, it's really moved me further on this path of discovery, of self-discovery, and knowing my truest self and integrating that part of myself with with the Steffi version of this particular experience. So I hope some of that has made some sense. Not at all what I was planning on talking about, but it's something that wanted to come through. So yeah, I think I'll end this particular episode with that chat, that conversation. And I welcome any questions, any conversations that you may have had with your own team, or even if you didn't know what that was, but you were like, yeah, I heard a particular song the other day and it brought me this message. And like, yeah, let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. All right, until next time, thank you so much for joining me. I love these conversations, and I hope I hope to see you again soon.